You know, there are a lot of activist groups out there today. Boy, I'm telling you. You can hardly say anything without ticking off an activist group. And now they're going to companies all over the country and saying, look, we want you to adopt our policies as another way of, let's be blunt about it, forcing the American people to look at things the way we do. Well, on the line with us today is the General Counsel for the National Center for Public Policy Research. His name is Justin Danhof, and recently he was talking to Amazon.com and also the group known as Groupon. We want to see how he made out trying to get them to look at things the way he does. All right, stay tuned.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Justin, Counselor, thank you welcome to our program. I didn't point out that he is an attorney and also has a Master of Laws in Taxation. So let me quickly ask you, Justin, how did you end up working for the National Center for Public Policy Research?
Sure. So, I came to D.C. and fell in love with the place is the short answer. The longer answer is that in law school, I actually stuck out like a sore thumb because I had some conservative beliefs. And so I had a few friends, one of them who had actually worked in naval intelligence in D.C. and said, hey, there's a few organizations up there that could use a guy like you, and pointed me in the right direction.
So how long have you been with this National Public Center?
I've been at the National Center, started interning way back in 2009, not that that's way back for most folks, started full-time in 2010, been here ever since.
Now, what is your job exactly? Do you go out and talk to these groups? Is that what you do all the time, Justin?
It's a lot of what I do, yeah. So at the National Center, in addition to doing our in-house legal work, I also I hold another hat, and that's the director of our Free Enterprise Project. So I do a lot of corporate engagement on that front. So we have a relatively large portfolio of public companies that we work on trying to realign corporate America with the free market values that made this country great. Where a lot of corporate America these days has turned to cronyism and profiting off the taxpayers and going hand in hand with the growth in our government. We think that a lot of these companies just kind of need a wake-up call and a reminder that, hey, this isn't how you got to where you are and by profiting off taxpayers and working with the government to grow it ever more. So let's get back to the free market tracks, if you will.
Well, you got an uphill fight. I came across a poll recently. I can't tell you who did it. I didn't jot it down. I should have. And it said that under 30 Americans tend to discard capitalism and favor socialism. Can you imagine that? Is that because of the way they're educated, do you think?
Oh, it has a lot to do with the educational system, and a lot of what corporate America really has become has a lot to do with our educational system. So when we have, undergraduate institutions where, if you're going to go major in business, right, you're seen as some sort of, money-hungry capitalist where, your friends majoring in humanities look down upon you, right? So that's kind of like the setup that we have. So those kids go on to become business leaders, and a lot of corporate America has become very, very, very progressive in a lot of their views. And we see it in everything from energy policy to Obamacare, which was brought to you by the pharmaceutical industry and the health insurance industry itself.
Yeah. Most people don't realize that. They're blaming it all on Obama, and that's a good place to start. But the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry, both of which, well, I don't know about pharmaceutical, but the healthcare industry, they'll get bailed out if it doesn't work right, which makes me sick. But they're the ones that stuck us with it, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, Obamacare was, written in large part by lobbyists who've been lobbying and working for the health insurance industry for many, many years, and that was a very undertold story. A lot of people focused on the politicians, but, let me tell you something. Nancy Pelosi wasn't kidding when she said we got to take a look, read the bill to know what's in it, because she probably had never had taken, even a glance at the bill. Those, the inner workings were done by, lobbying groups and, that worked with and in connection with the health insurance industry. It's no there's no secret to the fact now, it was at the time, and there was a few conservative groups saying it, including the National Center, that FYI, guys, built into this Obamacare are bailouts. Humana, they're a very large insurer. They could be getting a few $100 million a year from these bailout provisions, straight from the taxpayers. And so that's actually an issue we at the Free Enterprise Project, we've been working on. We've been going to, and I'll actually be out at Aetna's shareholder meeting tomorrow out in Denver, Friday. I fly out tomorrow, to talk to their CEO and try and get them on the record as to publicly whether or not they'll take the bailout money. And, our whole goal is, are we going to stop them from taking it tomorrow? No, but when these bailout provisions do finally sunset, because they are set to expire in a couple of years, we're hoping to put enough pressure over the next few years as they take hundreds of millions of dollars from the taxpayers that they stop lobbying to extend the bailouts, because, of course, if Obamacare continues on its current trajectory, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse, and the bailouts of the insurance companies are going to have to increase under that scenario. So that's another project I've got going on.
Well, you got an uphill battle, Justin. I want to go back to something you said right at the beginning. You went to Washington and fell in love with it. You fell in love with the city, with the climate, with the what? Because
certainly not the climate, and certainly not the allergies. Just the vibe and the atmosphere. The city itself is a young city. There are, I'm outnumbered quite a bit from the liberal to conservative perspective. But it's an engaging city. It's a young city. It's vibrant. We've got a baseball team in D.C. now, so that's a plus.
Well, the reason I say that, Justin, is because I know a lot of guys, and some gals too, who have gone to Washington sort of idealistically, and then they find out just how crooked, corrupt it is, and how much it is nothing like the old civics textbook said it was. It's really run by lobbyists and big banks and Goldman Sachs, and it's got nothing to do with the people. If it does, it's only incidental. Yeah.
My answer to that is, a few things. First, I don't work for a politician. Second, I don't work for a lobbying outfit. So, I haven't become disgruntled in that regard. And I work, where I work, we really do, we do, the brunt work, and we like it, and we get to stick to our ideology. We are sponsored by no major corporation, no major foundation. We take almost all of our donations here. We're a nonprofit organization from individual Americans who make small donations to support our cause. And so we work on behalf of the American people in that regard and the free market. And that's something I can continue to believe in and haven't been disgruntled on yet.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think most Americans know just how bad it is in our national government?
Well, if you look at polls of Congress, which generally, in the last few years has had somewhere hovering around a 9% approval rating, I think that gives you a sense of how bad it is. I think the other thing that gives you a sense of how bad it is, of the awareness of the American public, is that only about 55%, upwards, depending on the year, 60% of folks who are eligible even vote in presidential elections. So I think that gives you a level of understanding that the American folks do get that it's pretty bad here. They do get it's a place of a lot of discord. And I think that being on the ground here and, not working in Congress but dealing with them enough, we do see that the level of, discord has increased recently. And that is a tide that I don't know if it's going to stem anytime soon.
All right, we're going to take a break. When I get back with Justin, we'll ask how he made out with the two companies he mentioned at the beginning of the show. He went there and said, why don't you guys just stick with what you're doing? I don't think he put it quite this way. Stick with what you're doing and what you do best, and quit trying to advance the gay agenda or whatever agenda someone's pushing, like PETA. We'll be back in just a moment. My guest, Justin Danhof, an attorney and general counsel for the National Center for Public Policy Research, not funded by any corrupt company and not working for any funny politicians either. Isn't it sad that we've come to the point now where I think we realize these guys, not all of them by any stretch, but a lot of these guys are crooks, and the biggest crooks of all are the big players in Washington. I'm talking about the corporations, the unions. It's sad. It's not what the Founding Fathers had in mind at all. I don't know whether they could see it coming, but I'm sure if you really could turn over in your grave, there'd be a big rumble down in your area of the world. Now, you talked with Amazon and you talked with Groupon. Tell me what you were talking to them about.
Sure. So I'll just go in chronological order, I guess. I first spoke with the executive leadership team at Groupon. And Groupon came on our radar because a few weeks ago, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, the activist group, they put out a release, and it was covered in the Chicago Press, where Groupon is headquartered, that they were going to buy a bunch of Groupon stock and try and issue a resolution and go to Groupon's shareholder meeting, demanding that they cancel all of their daily deals that have to do with zoos and circuses that PETA doesn't approve. Because, of course, PETA thinks that this is torture to animals to have them in circus or zoos. And so the problem was PETA, even in its own announcement, made it very clear that they didn't buy the stock in time to attend the meeting. They didn't buy the stock in time to actually file a resolution. They were just going to buy it and try to do it anyway. Well, the Securities and Exchange Commission has lots of rules and regulations regarding how this is done, and PETA didn't follow any of them, of course, so their proposal didn't go anywhere. But they did show up, and they were outside the door protesting. So after we saw PETA's announcement, we had already owned shares in our portfolio, so I attended the meeting. And I had a very simple message. I said, look, after the Sandy Hook massacre, Groupon canceled all of its gun deals. Well, that was a knee-jerk political reaction because a few months later the company decided, well, that was a mistake, and they reinstated lots of their gun deals. They had deals for shooting ranges and, clay target practice and the like. And now we've got PETA outside the door protesting because you put a target on your back because with the gun decision you made a political decision instead of a business decision. And now, because you put that target on your back, PETA is out at the door protesting right now. So why don't you just develop a policy where you're going to offer deals that your customers want and you're going to supply them? Simple supply and demand economics, right? Willing buyer, willing seller. As long as the zoos and circuses are following the laws where they're operating, you just develop a content-neutral policy. And that way you can tell PETA, hey, thanks for your input. We've got a content-neutral policy. We don't make decisions based on political activism, based on activism of any kind. And it could be conservative activism, too, right? Maybe there's a religious right group that doesn't like the fact that Groupon offers wine tastings or scotch tastings because, that they don't like alcohol. And maybe they'll be the ones at the door tomorrow. But either way, you can say, we've got this policy in place. Thanks for your opinion, but no thanks. And you'll be defended from this type of activism. And Groupon happily accepted that idea because I think in large part because, like I had mentioned with the gun deal, they realized they had made a knee-jerk reaction, that they had made a decision based on the current politics, but it wasn't smart for their business. And so thanks to PETA for announcing what they were planning on doing in advance, we were able to go thwart PETA's attempts before they were even able to make them. That was what happened at Groupon. The juxtaposition comes with the following day. I was out in Seattle at Amazon's shareholder meeting, and I spoke with Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, on the same general topic, although the specifics are a little bit different. So Amazon is currently facing, first, a protest from a Change.org petition that has over 105,000 signatures that want them to end its association with the Boy Scouts of America over the Boy Scouts' position on openly gay leaders. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Amazon uses lists provided by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Oh.
There
Talking
you go.
about bad guys. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
That raised some ire right there, I see, Kevin. And they work in conjunction with the Southern Poverty Law Center regarding certain instances when they will and won't work with merchants, right? Because the Southern Poverty Law Center infamously puts out their list of hate groups. And, of course, if you're a conservative right group that believes in traditional marriage, you're going to find yourself on that list more than likely.
Hater. You are a hater, officially, right. Yep.
Exactly. And so, for the listeners who don't know, the Southern Poverty Law Center, this is the group with their hate. Not only do they list the hate groups, they put up a hate map. And here in Washington, D.C., a gay rights activist used that map to attack with a gun and a bag of Chick-fil-A sandwiches the Family Research Council. And if it wasn't for the heroic actions of a guard, a lot of people would have died that day. And he used the Southern Poverty Law Center's map to target them. And so I presented that to Jeff Bezos. I also presented the fact that the FBI used to have data and information from the Southern Poverty Law Center on its website about hate groups. And the FBI has completely disassociated just earlier this year. Disassociated with the Southern Poverty Law Center, stripped all of its information off its website, because even under the Obama administration, the FBI has realized that the Southern Poverty Law Center, I mean, they're kooks. They're not believable.
Well, wait a minute. Let me stop you there. They're not just kooks; they're crooks. They're making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money.
True.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's quite true. And so, I presented this to Bezos, and I said, look, they made a map that a would-be, mass murderer used. The FBI is disassociated with them. If you're a conservative group, they just list you as, a hater. Well, why don't you, Amazon, decide who you're going to work with and when, and do the same thing as the FBI did and disassociate with the Southern Poverty Law Center, because you've got the resources and expertise and know-how to know who you should work with and when. And Bezos would not make the same pledge that I got a group on. So he said the issues were complex and they were going to keep working on them, but he would not commit to ending its association with the Southern Poverty Law Center. So I guess in that sense, Amazon has kept a target on its back that it's willing to do, to bend to the will of certain activist groups. And I think that that's a shame for Amazon investors and Amazon customers alike.
Okay, now you've identified two groups, gay lobbyists, the gay agenda, which would include same-gender marriage. You mentioned people for the ethical treatment of animals. I keep waiting for the people for the ethical treatment of insects, pet-eye. Boy, then we're in real trouble. But what are some of the other groups that are really trying to take over these companies?
Oh, yeah. The environmental groups, they are the most active when it comes to engaging corporate America, right? All of these, the Earth is melting groups out there. So you're talking about Greenpeace, the Nature Conservancy. We're talking about the Sierra Club, and a lot of actual regional groups. There's a lot of smaller groups in North Carolina that attack corporate America, and it's all. And let me tell you, they're having a lot of successes in moving corporate America towards their very progressive environmental agenda, and it's starting to seep into our way of life in ways that are unseen very often, but increase prices. So, your energy prices aren't increasing by accident, and it's not all the Obama administration's fault, although a lot of it is.
Well, Justin, a peek inside what's really happening, and I think there's a tendency to block this out of your mind because it's too complicated. You can't imagine that what seems to be the Congress or the president and his administration are really being jerked around by groups like this because you don't want to believe it. But it's the truth, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot beneath the surface, but you know what? I'm going to keep fighting it, and I'm not alone in the fight out there. And if the idea of fixing everything that's wrong in D.C. is too onerous, well, take a step back and go to your local school board meeting and try and start the fight there. Go to your local town council meeting when you see something that's going awry. So, there's a lot of local battles that need to be won as well.
Okay, now let's give people a chance to find out how they learn more about your organization. We'll start with your website.
Yep, you can find all of our work at nationalcenter.org. You can also tweet us at National Center, or you can find the National Center on Facebook.
Nationalcenter.org. That's as far as I go. I don't tweet, I don't Facebook. But for those people out there who do, why, there you go. Okay. Thanks, Justin. Interesting talking with you, pal. All right?
Absolutely.
And listen, keep fighting. You may be losing, but you're still fighting. And I hope you don't lose, because if you do, we're all in a heap of trouble. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Justin Danhof with the National Center for Public Policy, nationalcenter.org, if you want to learn more. It's a good organization. They're not being manipulated by other groups. And you know that term progressive? That is the term that the communists in this country always call themselves. Progressive. So if you hear the term we're progressive, you mean we're either socialist or, listen, God forgive me if I'm being judgmental, you are tending toward communism. As if, we haven't learned anything about what communism does, what socialism does. I don't know. Well, stay tuned now for more news and information here on AM 1480 WLEA, where news comes first.